Okay. I'd love to introduce you to Joe Natoli and give me a few minutes. He is a really impressive person and has done a lot of things. So I want to read his bio because we are going to jump right into talking to him. He's not going to do any slides and introducing himself. So I'm going to take a minute to give him a full introduction. Joe Natoli is a UX consultant, author, and speaker, and a household name in UX and product design. For 3 decades, he's advised, trained, and empowered the UX, design, and product development teams of some of the world's largest organizations, from Fortune 100 companies to US government agencies and startups. He has published 10 books, the most recent being the second edition of the best-selling The User Experience Team of One with Leah Bewley for Rosenfeld Media, and he's a regular keynote speaker and lecturer at industry conferences and corporate events across the globe. Joe has also taught more than 400,000 students through his online courses and his own UX 365 Academy, which you can find at ux365academy.com, in addition to private coaching practice. Joe's approach to improving product UX and design focuses on addressing systemic personal dynamics issues across individuals, teams, and organizations by combating imposter syndrome, increasing self-confidence, improving communication and collaboration, addressing fear and dysfunction that are driving poor management practices, and also through helping redesign inappropriate and counterproductive processes. Joe's experience has been that when these root causes of personal and dynamic issues are improved and solved, the output of the work and the experience that people have with it improves dramatically. Joe lives in Washington, D.C. with his wife and 3 kids, and he strives to be the person that his dog Rosie thinks he is. I think we all know exactly what that feels like. You can find Joe, as well as a voluminous collection of free UX and product design resources online at givegoodux.com. We will be posting links in the chat throughout the presentation and the session. And the session is being recorded. I just saw that in the chat. Yes, it's being recorded. We'll email it out if you registered through Luma, and will also be available on YouTube afterwards. And with that, I'd love to introduce you all to Joe Natoli.
Hello, folks. Good to see you all here. A lot of you, which is always wonderful. Yeah, aspire to be the person my dog thinks I am. That's my goal in life, I think.
Tell us about Rosie. How old is she?
Rosie's 9. She's going to be 10. She is a Jack Russell and Beagle mix. She's a sweetheart, but man, is she high energy.
She sounds like she has high expectations too.
Very, 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 very. She's a very needy girl, and she doesn't understand why life can't just be playing 20 out of 24 hours a day. So at any given moment when I'm sitting here, she's usually on my left looking up at me like, can we play now? Can we play now? With a toy in her mouth.
Peer pressure, I like it.
Good. And it's a teaching moment as well, right? So you learn to relax, learn to take a little time out.
I love it. Awesome. Well, so we had quite a few questions submitted by folks through the Luma registration process. Mm-hmm. We've collected them, categorized them, and for the first portion, I'm going to walk you through those questions, Joe. We'll have a conversation, sure. And then for the second half, we'll open it up to anyone here who would like to ask a question live. So a lot of folks wanted you to start with current job market and predictions for 2026. Obviously, since this is a new year, what are your thoughts on hiring trends for 2026? Is it going to be difficult to get UXR jobs, full-time contract? What do you think is going to happen this year?
Yeah, so there's a lot of pieces to this. Okay. And it's the question on everybody's minds. So I think that, to me, we're going through a period where, if you remember when specialized roles were a thing, like when information architects were a thing, that was an individual role, I'm seeing some of the same consolidation that happened because eventually that got subsumed into, UI designers, UX designers, all of a sudden people were just responsible for it. I'm seeing some of that happen to research roles. And that company's like, well, we could just pay one person and they'll do all 3 jobs. Here's the caveat to that. That's always been a thing. All right. That's not new. That's not a new trend. Now isn't any more worse than any other point in history to me. Okay. And the companies that I work for and the colleagues that I talk to every single week, students, coaching sessions, I don't know that the sort of doomsaying that's happening online is really a real thing. I do think that in order to be relevant and in order to get a job, you have to be promoting yourself in a much different way. From the UX researchers that I coach to the people on the teams, the clients I work with, the one trend, and it's always been this way, but I think now it's more important because there's all this noise in the market about AI. All right. Corporate people, business people don't understand this discipline. I don't give a shit what they say to you. They don't understand it. It doesn't make sense to them. And no matter how much lip service they give it, they don't fully realize what the value is. Okay. So it is on all of us now more than ever to present ourselves in a way that cuts to the chase of what our work buys them, what it enables them to do, what risk it mitigates. Okay. The way I always say to say it to clients, for example, and I know I'm all over the place, but this is relevant to the question. The thing I say to clients constantly, executives in particular, okay, when they're balking at, well, the team, they want to do this research. I don't see why all this is necessary. I'm like, look, you know as well as I do, you're going to place this bet with or without me, with or without the work of these people, right? That's a given. You know that, and I know that. Don't you think it makes sense to invest maybe 1% of your entire spend or what you stand to gain by making sure you're not going to lose your shirt, in this bet? What if I told you that we can increase your odds of having that bet pay off, a factor of 10 to 1 maybe, by probably 60 or 70%? Is that time well spent? Yes, it is. Okay, there's no business person on this planet who's going to argue with that logic. But the problem with the market right now that I see is that researchers still present themselves and their work in their public profiles and the things that they talk about, and even in meetings inside organizations, kind of the same way that they always have, which is the focus on rigor, the focus is on research, the focus is on here's how we know we did a really good job with this. Here's why this is valid. And none of that is wrong, but it's the wrong story to be selling. All right, the right story to be selling right now is there's more risk in the market now more than ever. Speed is more important than it ever was. The need to go, the things that Agile has turned into. The story is not about research. Your story is not about research. Your story is about the immense value that your work gives to the business side of the house. That is my mantra. It's my mantra for UX people in general. You got to be talking business. You have to realize that the game you're playing is not pure. It doesn't reward design for design's sake. It doesn't reward good research for research's sake. It rewards dollars and cents for the most part. If you can speak to that, if you can speak to cost savings or margin increase or whatever it is, those are the songs that you need to be singing out loud. Here's what my work accomplishes. So, is UX research going away? No, I don't buy that. But you do have to do a very different and in some cases, more complex job of showing people who you are and what you do and what its worth is. And it's a different tack than we're used to taking. What I find is people in this profession overall, we think we're talking to our stakeholders. We think we're talking to corporate people. We think we're talking to the market. We're not. We're talking to ourselves. The language that we use and the things that we discuss and even the evidence that we show in a lot of cases is us talking to ourselves. That has to stop. So yeah. I'm not pessimistic about the future at all, especially with AI. And the ebook that I want to make sure I give everybody the link to that's going to come out next week. It's free. You guys are all welcome to grab a copy. One of the things in there is that like the advance of AI, everyone's like, oh, AI is going to take our jobs. AI is going to do research. It isn't. If you're a researcher and you learn to leverage AI to take away all the mundane shit that you don't need to be wasting your time doing so that you can focus on using what's up here to analyze, right? To think through what's happening. If you leverage it, you can be 10 times more powerful than you are right now. I firmly believe that. I've seen it in practice.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, there are a lot of people who asked about pivoting. Should we pivot away from UXR? Should we pivot to quant? Should we pivot to something different? What you're saying is there's not necessarily a reason to pivot. That might be a personal choice, but it sounds like you need to layer on skills
It's not a pivot
that
issue. It's a
have.
promotion issue.
Mm,
All right. It's how you talk about yourself. It's how you talk about your work. It's how people in the organization, if you have a job right now, it's about how they see you. All right. What you do is who you are. So in terms of a company, let's say, so if you're heads down, knee deep in research and your conversations all revolve around the rigors of research, that's who you are. That has limited value to all those people around you who are in very different disciplines, especially on the business side of the house. If the majority of your conversations revolve around, here's what this means to us, here's what we should do, and here's what we probably shouldn't do, or here's where we need to dig deeper because if we don't, this is going to blow up on our faces. I think we have an opportunity in the market here. You know, I know our margin on this product right now is 2.5%. I think we could easily get it to 5 based on what I'm seeing right now. That's a conversation that allows you to be seen differently. Those are the types of conversations that allow you to start to be seen as indispensable. Okay, my thing as a consultant when I work with clients, what I want from day one, and I have multiple reasons for doing this, but I want everybody from every department in the room on day one. But part of the reason I do that is because I want to be seen as useful and as valuable to as many people in as many places inside that organization. That's your job. It really is your job, okay? Because you have a superpower. You have the ability to do something that is so immensely valuable to these people, but they don't know that. And the reason they don't know that is because of the way we typically present it and talk about it and exist in our daily lives. So I don't think it's a pivot to a different role. It is a pivot in how you talk about your work and even how you present it, by the way.
Can you say more about that? Because that came up. There were several folks who asked things like other functions can tie more directly to their performance, tie their performance directly to business goals. So how do UX researchers tie performance to business profit, retaining or converting users, dollars and business metrics, when we typically aren't trained in that, but also maybe aren't allowed into those spaces where we can hear that information? What do you advise folks to do?
Some of it is homework, okay? If you can find a champion, your ideal situation is you have a champion internally on the business side of the house. You just open a conversation with somebody who knows, okay, who has these answers. Say, look, we're regularly doing research every single month, and we typically are looking at the user or customer side of the equation. I really feel like, and you say this to this person, I really feel like we're missing an opportunity here to include the business side of the house in this research so that we're making sure that the things that we look into, the things we analyze, the things that we recommend, include those goals as well. You know, if there are revenue growth goals, if there are product margin goals for companies that have multiple products, if I know what they are, I can be giving you a much healthier set of recommendations. You open those conversations. No one's going to hand it to you because they don't understand why you need to have it. Right? And people on that side of the house in particular are kind of like this with information, right? It's fear. But if you explain it in a way like the bet analogy that I said a minute ago, when you explain it that way, you get a very different reaction. They don't realize that they can get more from you. They really don't. So if you can't find an internal champion, the next place you go is any place that company is exposing anything, press releases, online interviews or articles, or did I say press releases? I think I did. Financial reporting. If you work for a public company who publishes an annual report, read it, understand it, dig into it. And if you don't understand parts of it, ask somebody what that means. Let me tell you why this is important. I'll give you a quick segue. One of the things I run into over and over and over again for the last probably 10 years of my life is somebody saying to me, well, you know, we keep advocating for research work and it gets shot down every single time. I say, well, tell me about the product you're working on. And they tell me about it. And I say, okay, so how many products or services does this company have? And they'll say 6. And I'll say, well, what's the margin on your product, your profit margin on that product versus all the other products? And they're like, I don't know. That's a problem. And the reason it's a problem is because, let's say the margin on your product is 2%. The margin on 5 of those other products is anywhere from 30 to 60%. Guess where the money's going? Okay, it's going over there. So if you know that you are working on a low margin product, you have to approach your pitches and your asks very, very, very differently. The story has to be, I know our margin's only this right now. I think it could be at least double this if we looked into A, B, and C, these areas. I think if we did some research here, did some digging, I think we learned some critical things. Again, this is a conversation that gets you a very different reaction than what people are used to. It can't be about we need more research. No one gives a shit. I hate to say that, but it's true. On the business side of the house, it's not important. It's a nice to have. And it's always going to be a nice to have. As old as this profession is, it's still very young in terms of business thinking, right? And the older your business leaders are, the more entrenched they are in like, here's how we do things, you know. That fight is never going away. So we have to stop expecting it to. We just need to make different arguments, better arguments.
Learn to speak the language.
Yeah.
Okay. What about in a low maturity organization, an org that doesn't even use the word UX, but they have folks who are doing UX essentially? How do you do the same thing?
Same way. And by the way, it's going to get me in trouble. They're all low maturity organizations. All of them. This fable of the high UX maturity organization, okay, because I've worked for some big companies for a very long time, for 30 years of my life, okay? They're all in multiple ways low maturity organizations, all right? Whether they know the nomenclature or not is irrelevant. The way that they handle UX and product design is very immature, all right? And that's a corporate reality. It has everything to do with how corporations are set up. There's diametric opposition built in from day one across departments. You know, and funding already goes to all these other divisions. And then there's us. We're like, you know, we get like this much of the pie. It's like, oh, what do those people want? So it's the same pitch. You got to be having a conversation with somebody that they care about having with you. I've said before that I don't use the terms that we use in our profession ever in conversation. And I don't even use the term UX with clients if I can help it. I really don't. It introduces a knee-jerk reaction to a definition of things that they have in their heads that we all know is not true or accurate. Okay, but it's what they think it is. The minute you throw those words out, you know, even if you say the word research in some cases, that's triggering for people because they're like expense. Time, expense, time, expense, time. You know, the alarm bell's going off in their head. So you don't say that. You say, I think if we looked into A, B, C, and D, I really believe that, like I said, whatever the outcome is, that this could be different. This could be different. You know, if you give me a day or two to look into this, I really think we can come back with something substantial. All right. I didn't say the word research once. Which leads me to one other thing.
Yeah, go for it.
Especially in low maturity organizations, which again, they all are, but there are degrees, right? Some are worse than others. In the really tough situations, how much time you ask for matters greatly. Okay, I've lost count how many teams I've talked to. They're like, well, they shoot everything down. How much are you asking for? 2 weeks, a week. Have you ever asked for a day? 8 hours. And they look at me like I have 3 heads, which I understand. But here's the deal, folks. We don't have to like that. I don't like it. It's still reality. But in a lot of cases, you can get somebody to give you 8 hours. You know, I did it before. There's a gig I was on years ago, and I've talked about this on social media. This company is just resistant. I'm sitting with the team, and I'm like, all right, so what are we going to do? What do we think they'll go for? And the lead says, well, I could probably get a day. I said, all right, great. So let's break out 8 hours into 15-minute increments. And we were lucky because these were all internal users. 15-minute increments, do the interviews. and we'll take another day to analyze, right? All hands on deck. Everybody's looking through these circling commonalities, or highlighting commonalities in all these interview transcripts. And let's start there. It's not perfect, but pattern recognition is still very much a thing, all right? And it works. So that's going to at least get us to more, what's the word I want? They're paying attention more now than they were before. And if we do something meaningful, substantial, and we get results, right, after we launch the thing and it's designed this way because of the research and the numbers go like this, now we got some credibility because you gave us 8 hours and we turned around this. Imagine what happens if you give us 16 hours. Imagine what happens if you give us 24. So you play it forward incrementally. But if you're constantly asking for something and getting shot down immediately, what that person is hearing is time and expense. Ask for less, do less, pick your targets, in a more narrow, focused way. That's the only way I know. It's the only thing I've ever seen work in companies that just don't care, about that stuff. They're just freaked out and they want to go.
Yeah. And wouldn't you rather have 8 hours than none?
Yeah, exactly. Something is better than nothing. I've had people argue with me that desk research is a waste of time. Okay, so is sitting on your hands and doing no research whatsoever better? How's that better? It's not. Go talk to 6 people in the building. They're like, well, those people aren't our target users. I know that. But there's commonality across human experience. You're still going to learn things from them that would probably be common to every person you research, period. That too is better than nothing.
Love it. I remember years and years ago doing that and just taking a piece of paper and a hand-drawn design around to different teams and going, I don't have money for research. I don't have time. Right. What do you think, A or B? And getting just enough traction that someone was willing to give me $500 and 2 days to do the work. And Beautiful. It changed things. It was slow, but it was scrappy and it worked. So we're actually, if I'm hearing you, we're sort of circling back to old scrappier ways of doing things. Yeah. Yes. And so pivot a little bit and tell us how AI can help us do that faster. Because I'm hearing a couple opportunities in what you were saying. If desk research is slow and maybe not as effective, does AI speed that up? Is that something that we can leverage here?
Here's what I've seen. And I've got 3 teams right now that I'm working with, all of whom are using AI on the research side. And it's just ChatGPT. It's nothing fancy. Okay. All 3 of them are doing a variation of the same thing, which is we have a ton of data that comes in, either from research or sometimes just from clients and customers, right? They'll give you a list of complaints. I mean, I have one client who they have one customer in particular that sends them spreadsheets every month of like, here's all the stuff that we are not happy about in their builds, in their, whatever. So this is a mountain of evidence. To me, one of the biggest wastes of time in the era of AI is collating data. Okay. And I know research teams that still spend time doing this themselves. So the one team, and I talked about this months back when I did a live workshop for the Academy. I'm trying to remember how much data there was from this client. It was something like 400 line items or something, like some ridiculous thing. So they fed it into ChatGPT and said, give us rough categories based on, like, comb through all these comments and group it into categories, as many as you feel are necessary. Quick shot across the bow. Okay. This is about 10 minutes all told. And it did it. And it did a pretty damn good job of it. Now, does AI wander? Does it hallucinate? Of course it does. What I've seen in instances like this one over and over and over and over and over again, okay, for the last, let's say 12 to 18 months in particular, is that the error margin in that work is not any more than it would be if a bunch of humans were doing the same work. Because it's hard and it's mind-bending, it's mind-numbing, actually. All right, just getting a handle on all this stuff and going, all right, how do I categorize this? So if you're 85% correct, you're doing great. That's work that this team would have spent weeks doing. All right, we're talking about weeks versus 10 minutes. There is no arguing with that. So my pitch to product designers, to UX folks of all stripes, especially researchers, is use this tool. Take back your time. Where your value truly is how you use what's between your ears. It is not spent manually collating data or putting together spreadsheets or any other stuff, right? The tactical stuff, you offload that as if you had an assistant sitting next to you and you said, you know what? I hate doing this shit. Go do it. I mean, seriously, that's what it is. You have to start using it as an assistant to buy your time back so you can be more effective, so that you can do a better job telling stories, so you can do a better job researching the company like we just talked about, finding answers to those questions on the business side that you don't have. That's time well spent. All right. Any work you do up here is time well spent. Think about it. I know all of you have some degree of manual work that you do not need to be doing right now. And sometimes it's just because someone asked for it in a specific way. You know, people in a certain department are like, well, I need this collated by, or delivering a report in this format or a spreadsheet in this format. Like, okay, come on. So I think it's a tremendous tool to buy your time back. And no one is going to convince me otherwise.
I gotta say, I'm usually a curmudgeon about AI for a lot of reasons. And I do think there was a good flag in the chat that there are ethical issues if you're uploading customer quotes and like participant information. All of that needs permission and clarity ahead of time.
Yeah, of course.
But when
and
you
it's
frame
anonymized
it as
well. It's all non-identifying. It's all non-identifying stuff. And in one instance, this was literally a local implementation as well, because they had the dollars and cents to do that.
Yeah. And some low maturity orgs do have the dollars and cents to do that.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah. When you frame it as an assistant in that way, it sort of makes me think differently about my perspective as well.
When this first started happening, I was as skeptical as anybody. Believe me. I mean, I really was. But the more I've seen it in practice, and the more I've seen that, look, data can be protected, identity can be protected, identifying details can absolutely be scrubbed out before anything is fed anywhere. The gain is almost impossible to argue with. And again, you're working for a company that doesn't care how long it takes you. You know what I mean? They're not interested in how much work that is. Not interested. They want what they want, and that's it. Clients are the same way. Third-party clients that I work with, they want what they want. They don't give a shit what my problems are. All right. So I'm only one person. If I'm gonna do these things, I gotta find a different way of reacting. I mean, so for me, sometimes it's just getting my thoughts together as well. I can't tell you how many times, in a week, I'll feed it some thoughts to ChatGPT and say, okay, I'm doing this thing. I know this, and this, and I also have this evidence and this evidence and this evidence. I know there are connections between these two things, but my brain is fried and I can't see it. I know there's something here. What do you think it is? And it gives me 6 answers, and 4 of them are like, no, but then 5 and 6 are like, oh, okay, that could be. So now I go back to my work and I'm seeing things with a whole new head. All right, that value is enormous for all of us because we use our brains so much at such an intense degree. I mean, that kind of clarity is hard to come by. So you don't have to give it specifics either. Just when you get stuck, it's a way to help you think through possibility. Doing as much training as I do and doing as much content as I do and books and everything else, I am constantly doing that with it. I'm saying, okay, I got this much and I got this much. I have no idea what's in between. Help me figure this out. I don't ever use it to write anything or create anything. I don't think it's very good at that, quite frankly. With the logistical stuff, this mundane tactical stuff, it's a godsend.
Cool. That's maybe the most practical approach that I've heard to AI in research in a long time. Appreciate that. I want to pivot you a little bit because a lot of folks had questions about applying, interviewing, portfolios, overcoming imposter syndrome and internal biases. So I want to make sure we hit those. before we open it up. But several people have asked, what tips do you have for creating a resume to showcase UX research skills? What if your work is behind NDA for a portfolio? How do I reduce the stigma of a layoff and extended career gaps and multiple short-term contracts? Like, how do we present ourselves as we go out looking for jobs in this
Yeah,
industry?
bunch of things in there. As far as, and this goes for resume, it goes for LinkedIn profile, it goes for portfolio. Results, results, results. Outcomes, outcomes, outcomes. Okay, it's the most important thing. I tell everybody, every bullet of your resume, every bullet in your LinkedIn profile, every single title of every case study that's in your portfolio is a sales pitch. It has to tell me what happened as a result of this work, or it has to tell me the problem you were trying to solve with the work you did, or the thing you were trying to uncover with the work that you did. Okay, because you don't always have outcomes. That's a given. Sometimes you know what came of this, and sometimes you don't. That's okay. So you either lead with a solution, or an outcome rather, or a problem. One of the two things. What I see all the time is that people title their case studies, for example, mobile application improvement for whatever. What does that tell me as a recruiter, as a hiring manager? It tells me nothing. But if you tell me, unlocking an additional audience of 3 million people for, all right, now I'm interested. Now I'm going, okay, that's pretty massive. You're going to get another 30 seconds of my time. Because that's the other thing. And again, I'm going to be all over the place because this is how I am. Recruiters in general are the gatekeepers of the hiring process. They're first, and they're in the way, quite frankly, because the majority of them don't know anything about your profession. They're in the way. They're gatekeepers. So you got to give them something that they can understand, hang their hat on, and you've got 30 seconds to do it. They're going to look at any of your properties, whether it's LinkedIn, your portfolio, or your resume. They're going to scan it. 30 seconds is the most you're going to get out of anybody before they either leave or decide this is worth another maybe 30 seconds of my time. And I know, probably 18 different recruiters that I talk to every year of my life, and they all sing the same song. They're like, 30 seconds is a luxury. I have a pile of stuff that I have to get through in a very limited period of time. So they're exhausted, they're time poor. You got to tell them something that matters, right? And something that moves the needle. So lead with outcomes all the time. Every sentence, every bullet in your resume should be, the format is this: accomplished this by doing this. Where everybody leads is, did this kind of research in this way. That's the second part of the sentence. The first part of the sentence is, did what? Made this better or faster or uncovered this big secret or whatever by doing, and then you tell me what you did. Because if you don't tell me the former, I don't care about the latter. Does that make sense? And that carries across everything. All right, every way that you present yourself. With NDAs, I heard that question come up. I think there are a million ways around NDAs. And I think that the thing that everybody has to understand up front is that most companies will never expend internal money chasing somebody on an NDA unless it's something incredibly egregious. Okay. Almost never. It's just not worth their while. It's hard in court. It's problematic for all sorts of reasons. Now, that does not mean you just show whatever. It means that you don't name the company, you don't name any proprietary verbiage or names or whatever, okay? But you can't absolutely say this is a large financial services organization that does business to the tune of whatever with this type of product, and there's no possible way anyone's going to say, well, you're talking about us, if there's no identifying information. Okay. In some cases, you can go so far as to showing screenshots of everything's blurred out. But with research, the screenshots to me are irrelevant. What I want to see a lot of times and don't see enough of is the thinking. All right. If you connected some dots that uncovered some major revelation, how did you do that? Show me that. Show me sketches. Show me you thinking out loud on a whiteboard or on a tablet or on a whatever. Okay. Show me what you thought about. You got to tell a compelling story. And the story has to start with the ending. Here's what happened, and here's how we did it. Okay, but again, the ending has to matter. There was one other question wrapped up in there, and I can't remember what it was.
Dealing with stigmas like layoffs and extended career gaps, short-term contracts, that kind of thing on your resume.
No one's going to like this answer. And I said it because people generally don't like this answer. I don't care. It's true. I don't care. All right. You shouldn't have to defend yourself for a layoff or a short. Like, who gives a shit? Okay. It happens. It's reality. You need to wear everything you've accomplished up to now like a badge of honor. I don't care if it was 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years, 20 years. It doesn't matter. Did the work, got results, end of story. Anyone who has a problem with that is someone you don't want to work for. And I know that's a glib thing to say, but it's the truth. The longer I do this, right? I mean, I'm 57 now. I'm from 60 is on the horizon, which is weird. But at this point in my life, I'm convinced that the knots we tie ourselves into over those issues are just pointless. Okay, you're not going to change someone's mind who is ageist. You're not going to change someone's mind who thinks that a layoff is a sign of something. You're not. That's an irrational point of view, and you have no power to change that. So you can't worry about it. All your effort and all your energy and all your emotional and mental and spiritual energy and everything else has to go into what story am I telling, and is this the best it can be? Does this paint me as the superhero that I actually am? Okay, so don't worry about that stuff, which leads us to the imposter syndrome thing. Yeah. Find me a creative person of any kind who doesn't have massive imposter syndrome, and I will give you every dime that's in my bank right now. All right, seriously. It comes with the territory. I've been doing this a long time. People say very wonderful things about me every day. You said a bunch of stuff at the outset of this session, right? That's incredible to hear back. Okay, because it sounds like you're talking about somebody else. I've had imposter syndrome all my life. I have it to this day, and I am okay with the fact that it's never going away. I'm okay with that. All right, it just is. I think the worst thing anybody can do is force themselves to be like, I have to get rid of this at some point. No, there's no such thing. That's a ridiculous expectation. You manage it. You manage it. You develop methods to force that voice to sit back in the passenger seat and take its hands off the wheel when it shows up. All right. That's what that is about. And I will tell you that I've been lucky throughout my life to meet people who are at the very top of the professions. Some of those people are actors, some of them are musicians, certainly people in this profession, that I look up to. All of them, every single one of them has massive self-doubt. And the answer they will give you is always the same. It's some variation of feel the fear, do it anyway. All right. It's just, your brain will do its hamster wheel thing where it's like, everybody's going to think this is stupid or whatever it is. Right. And you got to jam a spoke in the hamster wheel and say like, no, okay, we're not doing this right now. And I have multiple ways that I do that. I mean, I talk to myself out loud if there's nobody here, or in my head. If not. And
that's amazing.
That's what it is.
Yeah. I think you're exactly right.
If I could be successful, all right, with what I have sitting on my shoulder all the time, anyone can. You're never going to convince me otherwise.
Yeah. 15 years ago, I talked to Jared Spool and asked him for advice. And he said, Jess, every one of us is flying by the seat of our pants. That's right. I was like, well, if Jared's flying by the seat of his pants, then I can too.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Right. We think we have to know. You're never going to know. All right. Not knowing is the definition of this job. All of us have a willingness to stand on the edge of the cliff and go, all right, I guess we're going here. Think about it. That's the work you do. It's all unknown. It's all unknown. That's okay. All right, you got to give ourselves a break. That's a big part of combating this is you got to give yourself some grace. All right, and you got to recognize your accomplishments, and you cannot be afraid to position them for what they are. I mean, I'm uncomfortable with saying I've taught 400,000 students, but I am damn well going to do it because I did that work. Okay. I'm going to tell you that I worked for Fortune 100 and 500 and government clients for a very long period of time because I did it. It's worth talking about. That's not arrogance, that's confidence. And if I see one thing in this profession about how people present themselves, it is that profound lack of confidence comes across in your materials, in your LinkedIn profile, in your resume. It's this humble, like, well, I love the work. That's okay. But it's not enough. You need to be proud of what you've accomplished because all of you, no matter how long you've been doing this, have accomplished things. There are things worth talking about. There are stories worth telling. You need to tell them out loud with confidence. Okay? It's a badge of honor. Wear it as such.
Thank you. I think everybody needed to hear that. All right. I want to switch us into live Q&A. So if you have a question for Joe that you'd like to ask him directly, will you please use the raise hand tool on Zoom? And if you can't, drop your question in the chat. We'll try to catch some of those. I will tell you, we could probably talk to Joe for 5 hours and still not hit all the questions that we've got. Well, you have so much to offer, and we had so many questions come in up front. I've tried to categorize and group them and kind of summarize. Ellen said 5 days wouldn't be enough with you. But so before we do this, and before folks have to drop off, Joe, where can we find you if someone wants to follow up, take a course, have a coaching session? How do they get in touch with you?
2 places. My public website, and there's a lot of free resources there. There's tons of interviews and stuff in the media section and videos and so on and so forth. It's givegoodux.com, GIVEGOODUX.com. My coursework, we do live workshops every month. It's an annual monthly fee. The goal was to grossly undercut boot camps because I think they charge way too much for way too little. $1,500 to $3,000. This is a year's membership for either $199 or $299 for a VIP session to get you a live group coaching every month. We do live workshops that are free to members almost every month. That's UX365academy.com, 365academy.com. You can email me, joe@givegoodux.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. Send me a DM. All right, don't be shy. I'm one of those crazy people who answers every single thing that I get instead of, sleeping. So I'm always around one way or the other.
Awesome. Okay. If you have a question for Joe, use your raise hand and I will jump over here to the chat track records here and see what we've got.
Yeah, I'd love to talk to some of you folks if you're game.
Yeah. We'll just ask you to come off mute and you don't have to have your camera on. We didn't cover some of the questions around ageism in this industry, which I think several of us are feeling.
Yeah, same thing. And okay, obviously gray. Again, I wear that, and I tell people this all the time, especially people who are a little older, been around a little longer. It's the same thing I said before. You need to wear that age as a badge of honor. That's what it is. All right. Because your talent in particular at this point is that you can see stuff coming 3 miles away, whereas most people don't see it until it's right on their doorstep. All right. That's what comes with experience, pattern recognition to the nth degree. You're like, you know what? I've seen this movie before. I know the dialogue. I know the next thing out of people's mouths, and I know where this is going. So you sound a warning flag. You say, look, I've seen this before and it usually ends like this. Here's where I think we're headed. Worth spending a little time to figure it out. Again, you can't control other people's prejudices. You can't. It's impossible. What you can do is present such a compelling case that it doesn't matter anymore. All right? When you tell your story and they're like, I need that person. That's what matters. When I talk to prospects, clients, for example, I come out swinging, essentially. All right. And the sheet that I send them has 3 big statistics on it. That's like, if you read those 3 things and you decide you don't need me, that's your problem. All right. That sounds arrogant and it's not really how I mean it. It's just a statement of fact. Okay. I'm not new to this. I've been doing this for a very long time. I've been lucky enough to have a long track record of successes and grand failures that I've learned a hell of a lot from. You have to present yourself that way. All right. So when I get on a call with a prospect example, they're like, well, can you show us? Like, no, I'm not doing a dog and pony show for you. You tell me what you're dealing with right now and let's talk about it. You've got my time for an hour. This is a working meeting. Okay. Am I giving away the story a little bit? Probably. Who cares? They either are gonna understand what it's like to work with me and be, really excited about that, or not. And I don't want anything in between. So you don't approach it in a way where it's like, well, you need me. But you do approach it in a way like, look, here are the things that I know I can do well. Here are the things that I absolutely know I can help you be better at. Not because I say so, but because I got a mountain of evidence that says so. Right? That's not arrogance. That's truth. So my point is you can beat the ageism story if you've got that. Half the problem is how we tell our stories, the words that we use, the sort of demure fashion that we do it in.
Yeah. And if you've been working for as long as we have, then you have stories to tell.
Yeah.
You just have to find them.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Okay, Catherine, you were first with your hand. Come off mute and have a chat.
Ooh, that ageism comment just hit really hard. I recently left a job and I'm like, oh, dang, let me take my college graduation year off of my LinkedIn profile.
Yeah.
And let me take the early career jobs that are kind of irrelevant off. So I find myself like tuning to be like,
Sure.
for maximum impact. Any other, and I feel like there are a lot of people in this room that are like on the other end of the spectrum, like new to the field, don't know how to present themselves. Like I have a million stories. Like I'm like trying to like narrow down my stories because I have too many. So maybe any advice you have about increasing the relevance of the stories that you do tell? Because I feel like I have stories like when I first started as a researcher, it wasn't even called UX. I was a qualitative researcher, and I went back and backcasted myself as a UX researcher in early software work when we didn't even have these words. So
good for you, by the way.
Yeah. So any advice on like the tuning?
Hey, again, I mean, there's nothing wrong with taking things away, but make sure you're not taking anything away that tells a damn compelling story. All right. Those are my two words, compelling story. And what I want is people do this on LinkedIn in particular, in that you have the job and there'll be a paragraph about any number of things. Sometimes it's about the company, right? This is a company that does, first of all, don't do that. Nobody cares. Or it's about, I did this work and this work and this work. And I don't want that sentence either. I want, here's what I helped this organization be or do or have in my time there. All right. Here's how I made them more than they would have been had I not been in the building. I'm really serious about this. That is your story. That is your story. And I don't care if you have hard numbers or not. There's a story to be told. And again, if you've been doing this a while, like Jess said a minute ago, you got stories to tell. And that's what you lead with. Here's what happened as a result of my presence. Everything, every single sentence. When I do one-on-one coaching with people where we're going through, their resume or something, I am like the world's biggest pain in the ass because I'm literally picking apart every single sentence. And they're like, I know it's got to be outcome first. That's right. And I'm going to say that as many times as is necessary. Hammer that home. Every sentence has got to be working for you. Every single bullet. Nothing can be filler. Nothing should be something that they could really find out if they, cared about it. You can talk about the size of the organization, for example, if that's impressive, but it's a blurb, right? It's just a little minute. It is not your story. So the best thing you can do is tell that story out loud in as fierce a manner as possible. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Catherine. Tommaso, come off.
Hi. Yes, thank you. And thanks, this has been really helpful. I think I'm at the other end of the spectrum. I finished my PhD in human-computer interaction. I've been teaching interaction design for a number of years at the university. I don't have those kind of outcomes because I haven't been working in industry.
Right.
And the kinds of things that it's easy to tell a story about in academia are the things that you've said don't matter as much in industry. I'm wondering if you have any tips for kind of doing that talk at the other end of the spectrum.
Yeah. I mean, people coming right out of a program are at a marked disadvantage because hiring in this industry is broken. All right. It's stupid in a lot of ways. The idea that an entry level position requires 3 to 5 years of experience is asinine, period. There's no other word for it. Okay. It's ridiculous. It makes no sense whatsoever. How can you possibly have experience at that age? I don't care what you've done or what internships you've had. You don't have any experience, period. It's a falsehood. So the tough part about that is what I always tell people is you got to find ways to get it. All right. If you work for an organization, which if you're still teaching, for example, look for problems to solve that aren't part of your job description. Okay. Problems the department is having, problems that your immediate circle of teachers, your peers, your colleagues are having, larger issues that university, let's say, might be having. I don't know. But start looking for problems to solve and research to do and insights to uncover. Because you have to find a way to say in your LinkedIn profile and your resume and your portfolio, did this, this work for this organization? It's got to be real. It is insanely hard to get a job with theoretical student work. It is. I don't like that answer. I wish I could give you a different answer, but I don't have one. But I do think there are ways to literally look around you and say, all right, what work can I do here? Whether anyone's asked you to do it or not. And you could very well say, again, I did, uncovered this potential growth or whatever for this organization, which happens to be your university. You can claim that. You can talk about that. It's as real as anything else, whether they paid you to do it or not. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Tommaso. Jonathan, what do you have for us?
Hi, thanks so much for offering all of the wisdom and insight. My name is
Sure.
Jonathan Reed. I'm an agile coach, a UX researcher in Silicon Valley. I'm helping 3 founders currently at this time and their product teams build trust and really navigate the chaos of agile cross-functional teamwork. And in doing that, I'm also on the cusp, the cutting edge of introducing in a world where service leadership and the concept of psychological safety is not valued, is not seen as a thing, especially in the work that we do for something that's designed for people. You want people to have great experiences with products and services and spaces. This is a big challenge that I'm encouraging right now, and I'm working with the 3 founders on several projects at this time. And I'm just wondering, what has your experience been like trying to get that message across where you're helping the teams that are working on these products really understand how to build trust, how to build the effective leadership in ways that make your teams feel psychologically safe. And all that just trickles down to the user experience at the end of the day.
Sure. It's a loaded question. There's a lot of parts to it, but the thing that came to mind immediately, okay, because I have a lot of these conversations, is in a lot of cases you have to use different words than the ones that you're typically using. All right. For example, and I'm not picking on you, I swear. You said psychological safety a number of times as we were talking. Those are trigger words to founders, to business people, I don't know why. I don't agree with it. I think it's a common sense thing. Like, well, yeah, that's kind of the way that life works. People have to feel safe. It's tremendously important. But the minute you say the word, okay, it's like what the word woke has become. It's like the word, I'm trying to think of other triggers, DEI. All of a sudden it's this thing that it's not, because people attach significance to it. Just like the UX terms I was talking about before. People do this thing where it's like the minute they hear the word, they shut down on some level. And I don't know what they hear. Everybody hears something different. All right. Some people hear like, oh, it's fluffy. Like, who cares? We're trying to build a business here. whatever the case may be, doesn't matter. So the first answer in almost every instance when I talk to folks who are struggling with this type of thing is be careful about the words you use.
Okay.
Don't name things by their proper terms or by their psychological terms or by their industry terms or by, like, find a different way to say the same thing. And in terms of trust, right, the thing that you have to do is figure out why they'll care about it. Because this is going to sound really cynical. I'm a realist.
Okay. Lay it on me.
They're not going to care about it unless there is some degree of self-interest woven into the equation. They're not going to care whether people have psychological safety or trust unless it benefits them in some way. So the part they need to hear first is, here's how this helps you. Right? Which in a lot of cases is, here's how you get better performance or better accuracy or better attendance or better throughput or whatever it is. Right? Agile's a perfect example of that. Half the reason Agile falls on its ass in so many organizations is that there's no safety. All right. None. We say out loud, this is a culture of it's okay to be wrong. It's okay to be making mistakes. And the truth is that people get penalized all the time for making mistakes. So when that's the situation, you've got a big problem.
Right.
So it's a tough conversation to have, but you got to find ways around it where you're saying the same thing, but you're framing it as, our outcomes so far have been this. I think they could be this if we change these 3 specific things about how we go about doing business. Right? You're not giving anybody a speech about why trust is important or why that stuff is important. You're saying, here are 3 actionable things that I think that if we did them, let's try it for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever, I think we'd see a big difference. I think it's worth trying, and here's why. So that's the conversation that you have. And I do this with Agile teams as well, right? By the way, the whole siloed thing where design is over here and development is over here. My big thing for the last couple of years has been getting people to, like, okay, stop that shit. Everybody works together.
Yeah.
If you're in the same building, sit next to each other, work together on things, toss stuff back and forth. If you're remote, dev and design check in at least 3 times a day. Here's what I got. Here's what I'm doing. Does this paint you in any corners? Do you think this is possible? Any problems? Whatever. And you iterate together. And they balk at that. And I go, look, try it for 2 weeks. If you don't eliminate, a massive amount of waste in those 2 weeks, then, I'll eat my words. But I know what'll happen because I've seen it happen. And once they see it, there's no going back. So I hope that's helpful.
Oh,
Thank you so much.
awesome. Thank you, Jonathan. I'm going to pause real quick. Joe, we're at the top of the hour. Do you have time for a couple more questions?
I do.
We can absolutely kick this over to Slack or some other spaces, and folks have your email address, so we could get in touch with you directly.
Oh, let's do a couple more. I'm good.
All right. Okay. And before we do, I want to offer the giveaway winner for the book, which the name of it has escaped me. It's by Jake Burkhart. That's in my head.
Stop wasting research.
Thank you. Stop. I was like, it was something about research. Yeah, Stop Wasting Research, I believe, goes to Mary Carroll today. So Mary Carroll, you have my email address and you have Ellen's, and we will get in touch with you to get that copy of the book to you. Thank you so much for your participation. Okay, Agnes, you were next for a question for Joe.
Perfect. So I have a lot of stories to tell because I've been in the trenches for 10 years. What I'm wondering about, based on everything I heard from you about market positioning, do you think it is the right time to have an LLC or an agency instead of trying to find employment with a company?
I don't know that it's any different now than it ever was. I think that, part of the reason my wife and I are self-employed and have been for the majority of our work lives is because way back when, okay, for me, since 1999, I want to say, in earnest, I felt like there was no job security then. I felt like that was an illusion. I think that's certainly more true now than it ever was because we see these knee-jerk layoffs all the time, which have nothing to do with anybody's talent or ability, by the way.
Right.
It's it's numbers on a spreadsheet. It's like, look how good our numbers were. Well, why? Because we laid off 600 people. So I don't know that now's any better or any worse than any other time. I think that the risk is the same in a different way. Okay. Starting on the hardest part about striking on your own and doing this is the marketing and promotion and networking grind side of this. Okay. To get clients. Your first, and my wife and I, we created a course that's in the academy. It's called The Business of UX. It's about starting and running your own thing, from
Right.
soup to nuts, everything we could think of. Your first, anywhere from 2 to 5 years is going to be tough. All right. It's going to be tough. So when you decide to do it, you have to have cushion, and you need a lot of it. You need at least a year's worth of cushion. If you make no money for a solid 12 months, you need to be able to weather that storm. That's the reality, in my opinion. Okay. I applaud anybody who has the courage to go out there and say, you know what, I'm going to do my own thing. I think it's possible, but I think it's a lot more work than people often realize, and it's the unglamorous stuff.
I think it beats driving for Instacart.
What's that?
It beats driving for Instacart.
It does, as long as you can pay the bills. All right, and that's the other thing. Okay, I've known people who worked part-time at a job, doing something else entirely like that, while they're trying to get clients. There's nothing wrong with that either. So I don't know. I think everybody has the possibility to go into work for themselves. I think you have to be ultra disciplined. You have to be the type of person who's completely self-motivated. Because there's no safety. There's nobody who's going to, get you up in the morning and say, hey, you got to really knuckle down and do this. The times at 8 o'clock at night when you don't feel like working and you're gonna. I mean, I work more than I've ever worked in any job that I had way back when, in the 80s or 90s. I probably put in 16 hours a day or something like that, at least. And we both work on weekends. But the difference is it's yours, right? All that effort is serving you. You're not making somebody else a bunch of money or making somebody else look good. You're doing it for yourself. So should you do it? I can't answer that for you, but is it possible for you? Of course it is.
Yeah, so it is. I'm not worried about the work. I'm happy to do that. And I work for an agency, so I know what it's like.
Mm-hmm.
It's more like getting the clients is what is
That's what I'm talking
about.
That's the work.
Oh, that is the work. Okay.
That's the majority of the work. All right. That's at the beginning, especially, that's like 80% of your effort. Just trying to find work. Because you're going to get 99 yeses, 99 no's before you ever get one yes. And in some cases, that ratio is worse than that. So it takes a lot of intestinal fortitude to just keep going, because eventually that wall will break, but it is tough. All right. And you got to be set up where you can spend a solid year, going again and again and again and again and again. And you're not going to see profit normally for at least a couple of years. You break even, which is good. That's all you're gunning for. Your first year, all you're hoping for is like, look, I hope I don't lose any money. It can be done. I'm living proof it can be done. I'm no more unique or special than anybody else. It's discipline. My thing is I refuse to stay down no matter what happens.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I feel like that's not a choice. You cannot stay down.
No, but it's hard.
All right.
I'll second everything Joe said in there. I started my own company a year or two ago, and the first year is hard work. And I'll point you to the networking spreadsheet as well. We have a lot of folks in there who have started their own thing or are independent contractors and are willing to do some mentoring. So if you're interested in
I am
asking questions,
Awesome,
and this is for anybody, if you're asking questions or you want to talk to somebody who's gone ahead of you, the networking spreadsheet is a really great way to get started. And Joe's course, also the soup to nuts, how to run a UX business, would be a really great investment as well.
Yeah, and I'll say one more thing about that.
Yeah, go ahead.
And that is, there is no reason not to play that idea forward and look into it and research it and figure out what it's going to take. All right. None.
Right.
What you can't do is spend the next 3 months going, well, maybe I should. No, dig into it, start researching, start figuring out what's feasible and what's not. There's no reason not to do that. You owe it to yourself to do that. So.
All right.
Awesome.
I like challenges.
Awesome.
Thank
Okay,
you.
we're going to take one more question from Umesh, and then I think we need to give you your time back, Joe.
Okay.
All right. Thanks a lot for this talk, Joe. I really enjoyed it. So I guess my question is kind of along the lines of AI, and you were talking a little bit about AI and about how we can use it to kind of elevate our practice. My concern about AI is that, like, I understand, and I'm sure we all understand that in theory, AI cannot replace human researchers. This is not the kind of thing where you can just use like ChatGPT to do all your research for you. That's not how AI works. I understand that. I'm sure you understand that. I'm sure we all understand that.
Right.
But knowing how short-sighted business leaders can be at times,
Sure.
my concern is that, they might not see it that way. They might look at AI as this shiny new thing and say, okay,
They do.
what if we just fire everybody and make AI do all the work? Why do we need researchers? And so, and listening to, with everything you've said about how we put our work into a more business minded context, how do we push back on that kind of thinking? How do we advocate for ourselves? How do we make a business case that no, this is not the right way to go? We still need humans doing research, and if you just get rid of us and make AI do all the work, you're just hurting yourselves in the long run.
Sure.
How do we make that business argument?
It's reframing. Again, it's not so much pushback, okay? Because you're not going to convince. I've said this before. You're not going to convince anybody of anything that they have an entrenched belief about. So there are some people, founders in particular, right, these days, and that's a broad brush, forgive me, in particular that I've come across, that I've met, are just, head over heels in new technology. We'll get AI to do that. We'll get AI to do that. And I say, well, okay, you can, but here's what you're going to discover inside 3 months. And I want you to come back to me in 3 months and tell me if I was right or not. All right, A, B, C, and D. Here's what's going to happen. And sometimes they do come back to me and sometimes they don't, but I'm usually right about those consequences. I'm not going to sell those people on anything, okay, because they're not hearing it. You know what I mean? There's no argument I'm going to give them that's going to move the needle. But if you're in position with somebody, you're talking to a prospect who's seriously considering hiring you, right, as an employee or as a consultant or whatever, it's a different conversation, because the reason they're talking to you, period, is because on some level they know AI can't do this. It's attractive on paper, right? That the cost savings is attractive. There's lots of things that are making them go, well, maybe, there's all this hype on social media about it. It's about framing the story. And again, it's about showing in an outcome-based, evidentiary sort of way. I don't know if that's the right word. Here's what I can do for you that AI can't. I've seen lots of what are actually very sound arguments online on LinkedIn, for example, these posts people write about how AI, you still need researchers. They can't do AI. And the problem with a lot of those posts is that they're written for academics, pretty much. Okay. They're so dense and so formal. And so I have trouble reading them. Okay. After like 3 sentences in, I'm like, okay, what are you trying to say? You're dealing in short attention span theater, not just on LinkedIn, but in person as well. Everybody's been conditioned to get like, okay, what's the ending of the story? So no one's going to listen to a well-reasoned argument as to why AI is not going to do the job of a human being. But if you start with the ending of the story, which is, here's what the outcome is going to be if you use AI. Here's what the Whoa, what was that? Okay. Here's what the outcome is going to be if you use a person. And you start there. And then you back into all the reasons why that is. Now you've at least got somebody's attention. So a lot of this, again, is the way that we go about having these conversations and frame the conversations. You have to start with an outcome or a consequence that that person cares about in their daily life, in their job. The AI versus person argument isn't enough. You got to start with the outcome and then back into, all right, here's why AI is not going to get you here. Never. And there are lots of those instances. Does that make sense? Am I making sense? I hope.
Yeah. I guess this ties in with what you keep saying about like front loading the results or the potential outcomes
Always.
Whenever you're
risk,
making a
reward,
pitch.
consequence. It has to come first in the conversation all the time. The minute you're trying to make a reasoned argument of any kind, if that stuff doesn't come first, I promise you, and this is just time over the target for me, or it's not because I know everything. They're tuning you out. 60 seconds in, they're tuning you out and they're not hearing a word you're saying after that. It's sad, but it's true. All right. So my thing is anytime I open my mouth with a stakeholder, with a potential client, with an existing client, someone on a team somewhere that pops into a meeting, they haven't been with us, in 6 months, and all of a sudden now they show up and they have all these ideas about how things should happen. The first words out of my mouth are almost always either reward or consequence. Right? And whatever I'm going to say is framed around that. It's the only way that argument's going to land. Because again, you're not changing people's ideological positions. If they think AI solves everything, they think AI solves everything. So your job is to shift the conversation away from that belief and into, what do you want? What do you want to happen here?
Yeah. Yeah, that's what we talk about all the time, right? Is outcomes. That's awesome. Thank you so much, Joe. I'm gonna flip us back here to the grid. Thank you for everyone who stuck around as well. That was a little extra. And Joe, thank you so much for your time. Folks, we'll pull the links that Joe shared of ways to get in touch with him and find his courses and his workshops and materials, and email him directly. We'll put those in probably not in the show notes, but we'll make sure that they're attached to the recording in a way that you can find.
Yeah.
And I just want to thank you all so much for kicking off the year with us like this. I hope that you feel empowered to go out and be confident in the work that you have done and confident in finding new ways of showing your work, talking about your work, and that we're just going to rock 2026. Okay. We're putting 2025 behind us.
That's
moving
right.
on. We're all going to rock 2026 together.
Onward, always.
Right. Thank you all so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Joe.